Hey folks, Mark Levin here. Now, before we dive in today's episode, I want to talk about something truly valuable, protecting your financial future with gold. It's called diversification. Now, for that, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're the real deal with 5-star service and a sterling reputation. So give them a call today. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Trust me, you'll thank yourself in the future. Now let's get to the show. Results may vary. Consult with your financial professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Well, crash and burn. That was pretty exciting last night, don't you think? Oh, yes. I mean, Donald Trump was terrific. But all eyes were on Biden. All he had to do is sound like a person who had his wits, but he didn't. He had his nitwits. It was embarrassing. I'm just being honest. He looks like death worn over. And they had him loaded up with all kinds of information, and he's rambling on, and nobody knew what the hell he was talking about. I want to warn you about a couple of things, America. The Democrat Party and their media never give up. Whether they stick with him or not, they're going to plot, they're going to connive, no matter what. If that means sticking with Biden, they'll stick with Biden. Means they're going to dig even harder on Trump and attack him even harder. Look for every opportunity. These people are evil. These people are diabolical. For years, they have sought to cover up Biden's mental frailties. For years. As they got worse and worse and worse, their attacks on people who happen to notice it became more severe. More severe. They lie about audio and video. It's all right-wing plan. But last night, the whole world saw it, including people who don't normally pay attention to politics. 47.5 million people in America watched. And I'm sure many of them couldn't believe what they saw. That's the truth. Donald Trump was disciplined. He never flailed around. I think he's figured out how to do this. And he's doing it superbly. Things that were said about him by Biden, many of which were very nasty. Very nasty. But he kept his cool. I actually thought his closing statement was fabulous. His closing statement was fabulous. So let's break this down a little bit. Really, the only way for the Democrats to prevent Joe Biden from getting nominated is if Joe Biden agrees not to be nominated. There are other ways. They're very tricky. They're very difficult. But you have to keep in mind, 99% of the delegates at the convention were elected or appointed in support of Biden. He controls these delegates. So, that's number one. Number two, this is a big issue to me. And I'll talk about it this week and on Life, Liberty, and Levin, Saturday and Sunday. What the Democrat Party and their media have done, bringing the Democrat Party to the brink like this, is they're about to, should they try and swap out Biden, disenfranchise tens of millions of people who voted in the Democrat primary. Tens of millions of people who voted. Tens of thousands of activists. Tens of thousands of donors. To what end? And a relative small circle of individuals working behind the scenes will kneecap Biden, effectively warning him, and trying to replace him with somebody else. And with whom should they replace him? Kamala Harris is going to go quietly, and she plays up the race and the gender issue, which she clearly will do no matter what. Gavin Newsom's been traveling from one end of the country lying through his whitened teeth about Joe Biden's state, telling us and anybody who would listen that Joe Biden is smart, he's sharp, he's talked to him many times. So Gavin Newsom is one of the liars who has sought desperately to deceive the American people. The governor of Michigan, what a mess. What a mess. So even if Biden stays in, we cannot let our guard down. These people are capable of anything. Even though he had a completely disastrous night. What do you think Jack Smith is thinking right now? What do you think Judge Merchan is thinking right now? What do you think the appellate left-wing Democrats on the courts in New York are thinking right now? They're thinking now more than ever, they got to put the legal squeeze on Trump. And I'll get to the legal issues in a moment. These are evil people. They will do anything. I mean, look at the Attorney General of the United States. He goes to the White House with a phony, a fictional privilege claim, has Biden sign it, issues it, does Biden, about keeping the audio from the Biden interview with Special Counsel Robert Hur secret from Congress, even though he doesn't have a leg to stand on, even though they released the text, even though that was altered, even though they have absolutely no constitutional or legal basis for doing it. He figures, go ahead and sue me. You won't catch me by the time the election is here. They'll do anything. Okay, look at this case involving obstruction. Those of you who listen to this program or watch me on Levin TV or watch me on Fox, we've been on top of this longer and earlier before anybody. It's what I call the Enron Obstruction Act. Sarbanes-Oxley of 2002. Now, this law was passed because after the Enron debacle, they found out that Enron destroyed reams and reams of information, knowing full well, even though they hadn't had a subpoena or even a letter, that Congress would want to investigate their collapse. So Congress passed a law. The law is very specific. If you destroy records or change records, that sort of thing, that's a criminal obstruction. So what did Jack Smith do? What does Jack Smith always does? He takes the law, he rewrites it, takes the facts, and forces them into the law. Like a square peg in a round hole or a round peg in a square hole. 1512, the statute, has absolutely nothing to do, nothing, with what took place on January 6th. It's an obstruction statute, but it's not an obstruction statute the way the Department of Justice applied it, the U.S. Attorney, against all these protesters on January 6th. And it's not an obstruction statute the way Jack Smith applied it to President Trump. Jack Smith brought 4 charges against President Trump, 2 of which were based on this false interpretation, this rewrite of this obstruction Enron statute, both of which now have been thrown out. He's got 2 left. One of them is what I call the federal contractor criminal statute. And the other one is the 1871 Klan Act. That's a civil rights act when the Klan was trying to prevent and was preventing black people from voting or involved in political activism. That has nothing to do with January 6th. Donald Trump was not involved in preventing people from voting. The federal contractor fraud, he goes on for 30 pages or so, does Smith, laying out, well, here's what he did in Michigan, and here's what he did in Arizona, and here's what he did in Georgia, and don't forget the fake electors. It has nothing to do with that statute. Nothing. And yet they call it insurrection. We actually have an insurrection statute, a federal criminal statute. Donald Trump is not charged with that. We actually have a sedition statute, both actual sedition and conspiracy to commit sedition. Donald Trump's not charged with that either, because there's not a syllable of evidence that he was involved in an insurrection or sedition, or they would have thrown it at him. So this prosecutor went looking, and he went to the bottom of the barrel, dusted off these statutes, and said, all right, I'll mold it into this. The same guy, in an 8-0 opinion where one justice recused himself, destroying the governor of Virginia, Bob McDonnell. How he changed that statute, like he's changed the obstruction statute. Now, on Monday, we'll have the immunity issue. I will be here on radio, obviously, to discuss it. It'll be after Life, Liberty, and Levin, so obviously we can't discuss it there. But I want to remind you of something. This is very important. Excuse me, I think I have COVID, as a matter of fact, but I'm going to muscle through here. I want to remind you of something. When President Trump's lawyers raised the issue of immunity, I don't think there was a legal analyst in America who said it was a legitimate defense. Except me. I didn't go as far as President Trump's lawyers, but I said there is an absolute legitimate argument on immunity. Absolute legitimate argument on immunity. That said, I also pointed out that what we have here is this prosecutor, Jack Smith, who has criminalized the election process. Things that are supposed to be resolved by Congress, that counts the electors and makes these decisions and handles disputes, he criminalized. Contacting secretaries of state, urging a second set of electors and so forth. This is normal stuff. He's criminalized it. So on top of everything else, the charge itself, in my view, is substantively illegitimate. It opens up a Pandora's box for the courts in the future, and candidates and activists don't have the foggiest idea what they can and cannot do, given the enormous ambiguity and leeway handed to now federal prosecutors and state prosecutors. So this immunity issue is a big deal. We'll see what they do on Monday. But the legal analysts, oh, that's a slam dunk case. No, it's not. They also told you that the documents case is a slam dunk case. Bill Barr was all over TV. Look, this is black and white. You don't screw with the Department of Justice when they're asking you for it. You turn it. Excuse me. It is hard for me to believe these people have ever been involved in litigation. It really is. You have motions that you file. And we went through the motions on the attorney-client privilege decision in district court in Washington, D.C. It turns out on Thursday, Judge Aileen Cannon said, I want to hear the arguments on this, because keep in mind, the judge who ruled that there was a crime fraud exception to the attorney-client privilege was a former Leahy staffer appointed by Obama, senior status now, who basically held a secret hearing. Secret. Well, Judge Cannon has to deal with the trial because the case against Trump on documents was brought in the wrong jurisdiction. Washington. It should have been brought in Florida, where Mar-a-Lago is. So Smith quickly moves the case down to Florida. He got his indictment in D.C. and a rubber stamp in Florida. And this judge says, well, you know what? I need to look at this. I got to resolve these motions before there's an actual trial. And so she wants to hear the arguments on this. Issues on the gag order. There's no order, but Smith is demanding an extremely broad gag order on Trump in the middle of an election. And more. The constitutionality of Smith's appointment. So significant that two former attorneys general, including my former boss, Ed Meese, have filed friend of the court briefs, as has Landmark Legal Foundation. They're very legitimate issues, so it's not a slam dunk, the documents case, for additional reasons, too, that I don't need to get into. More when I return. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, the war on our justice system, the vicious assault on President Trump, has sent our nation into uncharted waters. And trust me when I say things are going to get worse before they get better. I truly believe that. The political turmoil and uncertainty that lie ahead could have severe consequences for our economy and financial markets. But in times of crisis, there's always opportunity. And right now, I see that opportunity in diversification with gold and silver. As these tensions rise and the dollar's future becomes increasingly uncertain, gold has the potential to go even higher. That's why I trust Advantage Gold. They're experts at helping Americans take steps to help safeguard their wealth with precious metals. Call them right now. 800-900-8000. Don't wait. Get their free 2024 gold and silver kit, plus a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. The future may be unpredictable, but your financial security doesn't have to be. So call Advantage Gold right now. 800-900-8000. There's no risk. There's no pressure. That's 800-900-8000. Get your special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 for qualified customers today. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. I haven't been on Fox all week, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because I'm very busy, to be perfectly honest with you. I have other things like this, and Blaze, and writing. So I've saved my thoughts about the lead up to the debate, post-debate, for Life, Liberty, and Levin, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, whatever time it is in your community. And I encourage you to go ahead and set your DVR, whether or not you think you're going to be able to watch it live. And we're going to have fantastic guests, Brent Bozell and Brett Tolman. That's Saturday night. Sunday night, Vivek Ramaswamy, who I've never had on, and John Yoo. I encourage you to watch it. We get into things that others do not. I explain the law a little differently than other people. And so stick with us. I'll be right back. My fellow Americans, the phony conviction of Donald Trump has sent a clear message. Our country is in deep trouble. Our rule of law is under attack, and the integrity of our elections may well be in jeopardy. In times of political chaos like this, it's crucial to protect your wealth and secure your financial future. That's where my good friends at Advantage Gold come in. Please call them now. 800-900-8000. Get their free 2024 gold and silver kit to help protect your money against times like these with physical, precious metals. Plus, tell them I sent you, and they'll give you a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. No one can predict the future, but you can prepare for it Call Advantage Gold today, 800-900-8000. Get your free gold and silver kit right now. Plus, Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 for qualified customers today. 800-900-8000. Give it a try. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professionals.
This is the Octagon of Talk Radio, the Mark Levin Show. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
So the two big decisions today, the obstruction issue, where the court shot down the Department of Justice's use of the Enron Obstruction Act, effectively, which had no application of January 6 whatsoever. But the district courts in Washington, the circuit court panel with two Biden appointees, they applied it anyway. Why? Because these are lawless lawyers in black robes. That's why. Not a single damn federal district judge said, wait a minute, that's not what this statute says. Not one of them. Not one of them. And yet, read it. It says what it says. And by the way, Amy Coney Barrett wrote the dissent, signed on by Kagan and Sotomayor. She's gone, folks. She was a liar who lied to get the nomination. We've been through this before. She's gone. She's a liar. We may get a good decision out of her from time to time, but it's a matter of crossing your fingers and hoping. She has no basic approach to constitutional interpretation, which means she'll do whatever she wants. But Judge Jackson joined the majority. And that's where he got the 6-3. Jackson joined the majority. But then there's another case. A hugely important case that we've talked about here before, involving the massive power of the federal bureaucracy. And that massive power is not in the Constitution. It was granted to the federal bureaucracy in a decision in 1984 by the court, creating what they call the Chevron Doctrine. And to put it in plain English, what that means is, this doctrine, is that the bureaucracy can issue a regulation, can enforce a regulation, and adjudicates the regulation if there's any claim against the regulation. So in other words, you don't have a shot. Well, in West Virginia versus EPA, which Landmark Legal was involved in, the court started to chip away at it. It's a couple of years back. And then there was this big case involving a fishery, where the federal agency overseeing fisheries not only put out a regulation, not only put demands on this fishery, but said, we are going to post one of our employees on your boat, in your fishery, and you're going to pay for it because we don't have the budget for this. So that fishery sued and said, what the hell are you talking about? You don't have the power to do this. The Supreme Court took it up. Again, Landmark Legal Foundation filed another friend of the court brief. Brilliant brief. I say that, I didn't write it. It's headed by Pete Hutchison, who's fantastic. We got Matt Forays and Mike O'Neill and a great team there. And the court ruled today 6-3. The usual three suspects. That what they decided in 1984 was wrong, and they overruled themselves. So they overruled the Chevron Doctrine. They overruled that case. And they said, now, what happens? Well, there's judicial review. Rather than the bureaucracy being given all this power by the court abandoning its own authority under the Constitution, that is the judiciary, now you can actually bring a lawsuit and have a judge hear the case. Before you couldn't. If there's ambiguity or reasonableness, silly phrases like that. Now, what does this mean? This means this massive, lawmaking, unelected faceless, nameless bureaucracy, in many instances, can now at least be sued and you'll have your day in court. That's the way it was pre-1984. But 40 years ago, they destroyed that. So now we're back to where we were and should have been. That your judiciary is exercising its constitutional powers over administrative agencies, which are not even in the Constitution, rather than the administrative agencies having all power, legislative, executive, and judicial within itself. So the climate liars are freaking out. All of those who have relied on these bureaucracies to advance their radical socialist agenda are furious. But ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call representative government. This is a big, big deal. Earlier in the week, from time to time as I was watching coverage of us waiting for these decisions to come out, they kept talking about the decision involving obstruction, as well as the other decision, immunity. I'm just being honest, so I sent an email around to our friends at Fox. I said, there's another decision that appears to be under the radar, and it shouldn't be. It is a big damn case. And I alerted them to it. And their coverage today was stellar, was superb. Because this is a big damn case. And we're going to wait Monday, apparently, for the immunity case. I'm a little nervous about it. We'll see what happens. But I'll tell you what's interesting. Now that the court has knocked out 2 of the 4 charges against Donald Trump, as an example, these other 2 charges against Donald Trump need to be litigated too. Through some process, interlocutory appeal, before the trial actually gets underway in any significant way, because these 2 laws are also being bastardized in a significant way, just as the obstruction law was bastardized. Keep in mind who Jack Smith is. Jack Smith is the chief bastardization of American law. It's what he does. That's why he's gummed up there in Florida, where you have a real federal judge who's asking real questions because these constitutional issues have been raised as a result of the litigation. This is why the same media who has lied to you over and over again about Russia collusion, about the Hunter laptop, about Joe Biden being Einstein, is in such a rush to get these cases done. They were thrilled with Mershon and Bragg and Manhattan. They love that Stalinist Star Chamber. That's the way to do it, baby. So if you actually have a judge that says, wait a minute, I got to deal with this motion. It's a serious motion. Oh, she's a Trump judge. She's just slow walking this. So in other words, we have to accommodate the media and the Democrat Party in our courtrooms. I'm telling you, these people are evil. They're diabolical. And I can already sense that they're starting to circle the wagons around Biden. I could be wrong. Who knows? But I don't trust any of them. And neither should you. All right. Let's have a little fun. We have a montage. The media's panicking over what they saw last night with Joe Biden. Cut 5, go.
President Biden's struggles in some ways overshadowing the multiple lies and grievances from former President Trump.
The universal reaction was somewhere approaching panic. The people who were texting with me were very concerned about President Biden seeming extremely
Let's slow down a second here. Keep in mind, these are media folks and Democrats who are texting with each other. I mean, they expose themselves. They don't even realize it. Go ahead.
Week.
And I think there's a lot of people who are going to want to see him consider taking a different course now. But that was not what we needed from Joe Biden, and it's personally painful for a lot of people. It's not just panic, it's pain of what we saw tonight.
That was an unmitigated disaster for President Biden from the second he walked out to the closing statement.
Yeah, look, it was a really disappointing debate performance from Joe Biden. I don't think there's any other way to slice it.
By the way, it's almost impossible to tell the media types from the Democrat operatives, isn't it, with their comments? They're all the same thing. Go ahead.
Whether he should continue.
I don't think we should sugarcoat this. This was not the debate performance that the Biden campaign team wanted or needed.
Nobody is a bigger fan of Kamala Harris than I am. And Gavin Newsom did a remarkable job tonight as a surrogate. Those two people are signaling to a whole lot of Americans that are paying attention, how come they're not running?
Joe Biden had an awful night, a terrible night.
This is the last chance for Democrats to decide whether this man we've known and loved for a very long time is up to the task of running for president of the United States.
Now, let's stop there. That had to be very hard for Joe, seriously. I know they're close friends. I know they talk all the time, according to media reports. Joe, and I tried to advise him on this program, don't go there, Joe. Joe put his neck way out, attacking anyone and everyone who pointed out the clips and so forth. And you could hear his somber voice. I understand it. That the Democrats have to decide what they're going to do. That had to be hard for him. And all these people. Go ahead.
Today, Joe Biden looks like the caricature that conservative media has been painting. And there were no clips tonight, right? This was, you saw it before your eyes.
This is Chuck Todd, who's been demoted, and for good reason. Go ahead.
And every aide that I've spoken to, Democrats are deeply worried about what they saw from the president.
He couldn't finish a thought. He couldn't land an answer. And his closing thoughts were even botched. I mean, come on.
I don't believe he's our best choice at this point.
Last night was one of those to see if he was up to the job. And the resounding answer, last night anyway, was no.
I got to believe that the Trump team is collecting all these clips for some great ads down the road. Donnie Douche has given up on his man, Biden, Mr. Producer. But here's the deal. They created Biden. They protected Biden. They attacked his opponents. They attacked anybody who pointed out the obvious, whether it was special counsel Hur, whether it was Wall Street Journal journalists, whether it was clips in and of themselves, part of right-wing Fox media. They did everything they could. And so I want you to understand something. When you know that the man you're backing, protecting, advocating for, doesn't have the wits to be president of the United States, and you're still trying to get him over the finish line, you must hate America. You must hate this country. You must not give a damn at all. Because that's not the kind of person we want in the Oval Office. I started talking about the 25th Amendment about a year ago. The Vice President of the United States, the Cabinet, will never trigger it. Party first, power first, country is a distant third, if a third at all. Again, they're evil, they're diabolical, the media, the Democrat Party, one and the same. And they will do what they think they need to do to win this election, whether it's to continue with Biden or try and find somebody else, whatever it is, it is. And they're not going to stop with the war against Donald Trump at every way and on every level and to every degree. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The war against Donald Trump, which is ongoing, has turned our legal and political system into a nightmare. With the 2024 elections on the horizon, we could be facing a period of unprecedented instability and uncertainty. But you can protect and grow your wealth by investing in gold and silver. Precious metals have always served as a safe haven during times of political and economic turmoil. And with the expert guidance of my good friends at Advantage Gold, you can navigate this insane climate with confidence. Call Advantage Gold right now. 800-900-8000. They'll send you a free 2024 gold and silver kit that tells you how to help keep your money safe when things are bad. Plus, tell them I sent you, and they'll give you a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. Call Advantage Gold, 800-900-8000. Get your special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 for qualified customers. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Two great shows this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Whatever time it is in your community, I would ask you to go ahead and set your DVR just in case, providing you with the kind of information I think that you would want. How much time do I have, Rich? Oh, not. Okay, here's Corinne, what's her name, on Air Force One today. What was Biden's problem? Cut 6, go.
Can you tell us more about his cold? When did he contract it? What did it affect his performance last night?
For COVID. So, okay, step back for a second. So, yes, and I think we shared this with many people yesterday. The president had a cold. He had a sore throat. That happens. And that's what you heard last night. And, you know, I'll leave it there. I don't have anything else to add. I
hope they're paying her a hell of a lot of money for being a buffoon. For all time. Audio, video, for all time. Go ahead.
Just moments ago. But yes, he had a cold. He had a sore throat. Once he knew that he had a cold and a sore throat, he certainly tested for COVID. It was negative. And then we moved on from there.
Why did the White House wait until the middle of the debate to release that information?
I'll tell you this. Look, he had a strong debate prep week. And he got a cold, which happens. It happens. It's not unusual. It's not something, you know, I mean, you don't share every time, you know, the president has a cold. It happened.
No, but you did share it. You shared it in the middle of the debate when he was sinking like a rock. So it's nothing to do with him having a cold. We know what it is. He has stage 5 out of 7 stages of dementia. It's that simple. Go ahead.
Once he had the cold and had a sore throat, again, he tested negative for COVID, and then we moved on.
We didn't ask if he had COVID. We didn't even ask if he had a cold. You said he had a cold, and that's your excuse? For what we saw? No. This has nothing to do with that. They're still lying. And I'm telling you, you can't trust these people. They are not burying Joe Biden yet, regardless of what the New York Times says. And they wrote an editorial that I'll get to next hour. They're not going to bury him. Now, they may eventually bury him, but not right now. They're still fighting. Jill is fighting. Jill loves the trappings of power. And I think you're going to love the fact that on Life, Liberty, and Levin, I really dig into Jill Biden and I compare her to some historical figures, which nobody else has done because nobody wants to expose her. So I will. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Well, let's start this way with this stuff. Harry Eaton, the Stater report at CNN. This guy's really quite good. Watch. Whenever I say that, then they turn south. But he seems really good. He's very emotional about what he does, which in and of itself is an accomplishment. So he's the data guy. And so they're looking at these numbers on the incumbency of a president. And here's what he says. Hat tip, real clear politics on CNN. Cut one, go.
CBS News YouGov conducted some polling post-debate. We can compare it to the pre-debate numbers. And the bottom line, Al, it's not any good. It's not any good. Look at this. Voters who say that Biden has the mental health to be president. It was just 35% pre-debate. Look where it's dropped to now post-debate, 27%. How about that he should be running for president? It was 37% pre-debate. It's now 28%. I have never seen numbers this bad for an incumbent president during my lifetime. I mean, that mental health to be president, just 27%. You might say, okay, you know, that's low, but a lot of people thought Biden was too old back in 2020. These numbers look nothing like this back in 2020. These numbers were bad already. And the truth is, Allison, they have gotten just considerably worse, even in just a few days after that first presidential debate.
Because he has dementia. And 4 years ago is like a world ago for people who suffer from dementia. And unfortunately, whether it's dementia or Alzheimer's, it starts to pick up pace. It becomes cumulative. The synapses in the brain cannot function properly. The case of Alzheimer's, tau, a protein, smothers the electrical circuits in the brain. I assume dementia works similarly. I don't know. Now, 5 weeks ago on Fox and on this program, I went through the 7 stages of dementia. Nobody ever did that before. Everybody was commenting, he's shuffling, he's this, something's wrong. I said, all right, let's take a serious look at this, a substantive look at this. The other week, I took a serious and substantive look at Jill Biden and compared her to Edith Wilson. Now everybody's doing that. I said she's the power behind the throne. If she wanted to put an end to this, this would be over. It's time to focus on Jill. Now everybody is focused on Jill because she is the power behind the throne. Several months ago, I did a show on the 25th Amendment that it's become a dead letter because the vice president and the cabinet secretaries have to be involved in triggering it. They won't. Now we have a congressman correctly, Chip Roy, who's introduced a resolution urging the triggering of the 25th Amendment, which will never happen in this cabinet with this vice president. Now let's go back to Harry Eaton on CNN on these numbers. And he's with Allison Camerata. Cut 2, go.
Harry, do we have polling yet that suggests that voters want a different candidate?
Yeah, this is the whole question, right? If it's not President Biden, then who could it be on the Democratic side? And the truth is, there are no easy answers. You know, I went back and looked at the polling versus Donald Trump for a bunch of different Democrats have been suggested. Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris. Look at this. They all trail Donald Trump. So the idea here that we're somehow going to get this magic bullet, that there's somehow going to be some Democrat who can beat Donald Trump easily, I just don't see it in the numbers. At this particular point, if Joe Biden takes on Donald Trump, he's trailing. If there's another Democrat who runs against Donald Trump, they too are trailing. Perhaps you want to make the argument you bring in another Democrat who isn't as well known as Joe Biden, who has universal name recognition, and maybe they could change the numbers. But the fact is, any Democrat who entered the race right now, at least among those that are being suggested by a bunch of folks, they would all enter the race at this particular point as an underdog to former President Donald Trump.
But, Harry, are those numbers old numbers or are those since the debate? I mean, maybe the conversation has changed.
Yeah, those are not numbers that have been taken since the debate, though I was looking at numbers that were post-debate. This takes into account an average, a long-term average, right? Because the key is I don't just want to rely upon one polling number. But even the limited polling data that we have post-debate suggests that none of those candidates on your screen, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, or Kamala Harris, any of those would be favored over Donald Trump. He leads against all of them, whether you look at the pre-debate numbers or the post-debate numbers. And of course, I like to look at an aggregate of numbers, so that's what I did. But the fact is, even if you just did post-debate, it really wouldn't look any different.
Over at NBC News, they're looking at polls too. Cut 3, go.
This isn't just his political opponents saying he should get out of the race. This is worry within his own party, concern within his own party. 45% of Democrats saying that Biden should step aside. And obviously that performance, I think, just reinforcing and maybe even increasing in terms of its potency, the main concern, or one of the main concerns we've seen over and over when it comes to Biden, and that is his age. This is a Gallup poll just before the debate, and already going into the debate, 67% of voters said they considered Biden too too old to be president. That's 30 points higher than the number for Donald Trump. And just take a look at the other oldest nominees in history. John McCain in 2008, Dole 96, Reagan in both of his campaigns. The number was somewhere in the 30s, even the 20s for Reagan. That Biden number is a number we've never seen for any candidate before. And I will say, as we wait for definitive polling, we do have one poll that is now asked the horse race question after the debate, asking Biden versus Trump after the debate, who are you for? It's just from one state. It's from New Hampshire. But in that New Hampshire poll, this is out just a couple minutes ago, Trump leads by 2 points in the new New Hampshire poll. If you can read my writing, Trump +2. And the critical thing there is in 2020, Biden carried New Hampshire by 7.5 points.
Okay. Now, what have I told you about polls? We got to deal with them. They're interesting. They do give us some insight, but they must not impact activism, voting early, getting other people to vote, doing anything you can, donations. We cannot sit on our laurels because there's no laurels to sit on. Anything can change, and these people are untrustworthy, whether it's the media or the Democrat Party officials and operatives. They're diabolical. Then we have Carl Bernstein on CNN. This guy is disgusting. This guy and the others have been a mouthpiece for Biden, have been pom-pom dancers for Biden. All of them. So now some of them are just trying to, take a step back and say, look at what I found. Look at what I see. These are all co-conspirators in the cover-up. And by the way, that debate was just 5 days ago. Just 5 days ago. And they're doing everything they can to put it behind us and to put Biden behind us. Here he is with Anderson Cooper, Carl Bernstein. Cut 4, go.
Carl, according to the people you've been talking to, what are you hearing?
Well, these are people, several of them, who are very close to President Biden, who love him, have supported him, have been among them are some people who have raised a lot of money for him. And they are adamant that what we saw the other night, the Joe Biden we saw, is not a one-off, that there have been 15, 20 occasions in the last year and a half.
So let's slow down. So why didn't he come to the defense of the Wall Street Journal reporters? Why didn't he immediately come out as soon as he was getting this information and talk about this on CNN? Why didn't he immediately confront the lies coming out of the White House about, the false clips and all the rest of it? He waits till now because he's a coward. Go ahead.
Has appeared somewhat as he did in that horror show that we witnessed. And what's so significant is the people that this is coming from, and also how many people around the president are aware of such incidents, including some reporters, incidentally, who have witnessed some of them. But here we see tonight, as these people say, President Biden at his absolute best, and yet these people who have supported him, loved him, campaigned for him, see him often, say that in the last 6 months particularly, there has been a marked incidence of cognitive decline and physical.
And by the way, you have reports now at the New York Times that he basically works 6 hours a day. You have reports during the debate prep. These are the staff who they trashed, the Biden family, so the staff is trashing back. Actually, they're more than staff. These are as close as 18 people that he's ever known, whose hair he hasn't sniffed. And they're now all saying that he would start at 11 in the morning and he needed an hour nap during the afternoon. You get the point. And we're supposed to believe, we gave a good speech. Who cares? At this point, it's obvious to everybody. Even the Holocaust-denying New York Slimes, which, of course, again, was all in, covered up everything. The Democrats are voting in Democrat primaries, independents in some of them. People contributed their hard-earned money. The activists are out there. They got the man they wanted. The media told them he's a good guy. He's got his wits, sharp as a tack, blah, blah, blah. And now the media are telling them all for naught. We're going to disenfranchise all of you. The money you spent, forget about it. All the hours you spent knocking on doors, forget about it. That's right. In Chicago, the elites have to find somebody else. They're between a rock and a hard place because they put us between a rock and a hard place. That's why. When you lie, and you lie systemically, and you lie for a living, as the media do and these Democrat mouthpieces do, this is what you get. Cut 5, go.
There is no question. I have heard for 2 years how sharp Joe Biden is in his national security meetings. He has special briefing books.
Now he's an analyst. Right, Mr. Producer? He's never been an advocate on there. Right? Mr. This is worse than Watergate? Now he's an analyst. Now he's stepping back. Now he's trying to claw back and get some credibility back. He has none. He's groveling. Go ahead.
Ukraine, on the situation in Gaza that go down into very detailed military reports. He has an absolute command of the facts. He's sharp as can be. You see the evidence of his being the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate, of his work as vice president on foreign relations. So we're clearly dealing with two sets of one person. And it really needs to be explored.
No. Two sets of one person. Look, he was a nitwit even before all of this. That's one thing. But we're talking about today. Today it's certified and it's official. Ask Robert Hur, who was trashed by the Democrats in Congress, who was trashed by the media. He didn't have to go there. He didn't have to say these things. Well, he felt he had to, and he was trying to send a signal to the American people. We have a problem here. The Justice Department tried to get him to take it out. He wouldn't. But even more, the White House counsel's office worked overtime to try and get him to take it out of the report. He refused. And, of course, the audio that he's referencing is under lock and key at the United States Department of Justice. They will not release it. They concocted a phony privilege. And, of course, this is the party that's worried about the Constitution and democracy. Go ahead.
The people I'm talking to, and I think an awful lot of major Democrats believe this, including some who have made statements to the contrary.
None of whom will give their names, only a handful. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need. These clips are important. I use them to make points. Now, some shows I don't use a single clip, like the other day. Or I'll hit one topic, 2, maybe 3. Other shows I'll hit 10. There's no formatics here. It is what it is. But it's important to understand what's taking place here. The press really grilled this Karine Jean-Pierre at the White House. And so people are saying that's because they were lied to. No, it's not. The press knew they were being lied to. The press regurgitates the talking points and the propaganda. The problem for the press is that debate made the press irrelevant in terms of us seeing what was taking place. It didn't matter how they described anything. You saw it, and you were furious. You were furious with Biden. You were furious with Jill Biden. You were furious with the Democrat Party apparatchiks. And you were furious with the propaganda media. The Pravda, Al Jazeera, American media. So here it is today at the White House. Cut 6, go.
Does President Biden, at 81 years old, have Alzheimer's, any form of dementia, or degenerative illness that cause these sorts of lapses? And it's a yes or no question. And if you don't know, why don't you, as one of his senior staff members, know?
I have an answer for you. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
It's a no. And I hope you're asking the other guy the same exact question.
Very, very clever. See? She's just, in the end, a propagandist. And how does she know it's a no? Has he had a brain scan? I'm serious. To determine whether he has Alzheimer's? What kind of tests have been done? None. None. And so that would have been the follow-up question. Okay, let's focus on your guy, not the other guy, Corinne. What tests have been conducted to determine whether or not he has some neurological issues? None. Is he taking any medicine to deal with neurological issues? I mean, there's so many great questions. I don't know. I'm not even a reporter. But then guess what? Somebody did ask. Somebody did ask. Cut 7, go.
As it relates to his medical records, we have been transparent. We have released thorough reports from his medical team every year since he's been.
No, you haven't. You've released synopsises. What medicine is he taking? Now, normally that's a private matter. Private matter for you and you and you and you and me and everybody else. But when it comes to an issue of his cognitive abilities, his neurological health, and he wants to remain president and run for re-election, it is an issue. I don't need to ask the other guy. Go ahead.
Something that we have been pretty consistent about as it relates to, something like a cognitive test. To the question that you're asking me about what the speaker, former speaker said, obviously she can speak for herself. His team, who has said, the medical team said it is not warranted in this case. We have put forward a thorough, transparent.
So the answer is no. They're not going to do a cognitive test because they know what it'll find. The answer is no, they're not going to release the audio. They'll come up with phony privileges and do whatever they have to do because they know what you'll hear. The debate destroyed all this for people unlike you who are tuned in, engaged, understand what's taking place. But the rest of the country, at least a lot of it, got to see and said, oh my God, what the hell happened here? Nothing. This is what we've been saying. I'll be right back. Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need.
He's driving the media mad. Mark Levin, call in with your outrage. 877-381-3811.
This program is moving way too fast. All right. Well, there is a lot going on out there that we haven't touched yet. And we have Joe Biden's going to do his first interview. I think it's going to be Sunday. Won't we all be watching July 4th weekend, Mr. Producer? Anyway, That'll be the first TV interview he does post-debate with George Stephanopoulos. Now, this is ironic. George Stephanopoulos has been a propagandist for the Democrats, for Biden, for Obama, for Clinton, since before he hit puberty. And I don't even know if he's hit puberty yet, but it doesn't matter. So the point is, he goes there. It's like the next debate is supposed to be ABC News. He ought to do a debate with Martha McCullum. Not a debate, an interview with Martha McCullum. She's one of the finest journalists there are. She really is. And there are several. But she's got the perfect program for it. Perfect format for it. So I would vote that she should do it. And during the course of the immunity case, I've indicated to you that Justice Clarence Thomas, in his concurring opinion, raised the issue of the prosecutor himself, the legitimacy, the constitutional legitimacy of this prosecutor. You know, it's not a minor issue, as I've said before, still struggling with the COVID. In any event, two former attorneys general I've mentioned, including my former boss. It's been addressed to Breitbart and Red State, a few others, Blaze. But here, Justice Thomas uses presidential immunity case to question the legality of the whole Trump prosecution. Because he's the originalist of the originalists. He really is. He is the platinum standard. The Supreme Court handed down a mixed bag of a ruling on presidential immunity, they write at Red State, specifically Strife. In my view, they took what could have been a straightforward and elegant decision. The president is immune for prosecution for acts committed in office unless he's been impeached for those acts. And he says, turned it into a dog's breakfast of angels on the head of a pin, litigation about what constitutes official and unofficial. In any event, that's not my point in reading this. But what has passed with remarkably little notice is Justice Clarence Thomas's concurrence. Justice Thomas says the court is putting the cart before the horse. The first question that needs to be answered is not whether acts were official or unofficial. The critical first question is whether this prosecution is legal at all. And Judge Cannon needs to deal with this, and hopefully she'll look at the briefs that were filed and she'll see the quality of two briefs that are absolutely bulletproof legally. She can pick one or the other, the landmark brief or the brief on behalf of Attorneys General Meese and Mukasey. Thomas's comments begin on the 44th page of the linked document. In any event, he says, I write separately to highlight another way in which this prosecution may violate our constitutional structure. In this case, the Attorney General purported to appoint a private citizen as special counsel to prosecute a former president on behalf of the United States. But I am not sure that any office for special counsel has been established by law, quote unquote, as the Constitution requires. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2, by requiring the Congress to create federal offices by law, the Constitution imposes an important check against the president. He cannot create offices at his pleasure. If there's no law established in the office that the special counsel occupies, then he cannot proceed with his prosecution. A private citizen cannot criminally prosecute anyone, writes Thomas, let alone a former president. No former president has faced criminal prosecution for his acts while in office in more than 200 years since the founding of our country. And that is so despite numerous past presidents taking actions that many would argue constitute crimes. If this unprecedented prosecution is to proceed, it must be conducted by someone duly authorized to do so by the American people. The lower courts should thus answer these essential questions concerning the special counsel's appointment before proceeding. And Judge Aileen Cannon is doing just that, which is why the same haters and BSers, liars, and low IQ buffoons who are saying they want to impeach the existing Supreme Court justices have been attacking her. If they weren't attacking her, she'd be as illegitimate in her decisions, as corrupt in her approach as Judge Chutkan and Merchan and their ilk. It goes on, does Thomas. Even if the special counsel has a valid office, questions remain as to whether the Attorney General filled that office in compliance with the Appointments Clause. For example, it must be determined whether the special counsel is a principal or inferior officer. Now, I guarantee you never heard of those things till you listen to this program. That's why you're so smart, seriously. No, not because you listen to me, but because you want to know stuff. If the former, that is a principal officer, his appointment is invalid because the special counsel was not nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate, as principal officers must be under Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. Even if he's an inferior officer, the Attorney General could appoint him without presidential nomination and senatorial confirmation only if, quote, Congress by law vested the appointment in the Attorney General as a head of a department. I pointed this out at length here and on Fox. So the special counsel's appointment is invalid unless the statute created the special counsel's office and gave the Attorney General the power to fill it by law. So Thomas writes, whether the special counsel's office was established by law is not a trifling technicality. If Congress has not reached a consensus that a particular office should even exist, the executive lacks the power to unilaterally create and then fill that office, which is exactly what Garland has done. Given that the special counsel purports to wield the executive branch's power to prosecute, the consequences are weighty. Our Constitution's separation of powers, including its separation of powers to create and fill offices, is the absolutely central guarantee of a just government and the liberty that it secures for us. And he cites Justice Scalia's dissent in the independent counsel statute, the only one who did dissent. There's no prosecution that can justify imperiling it. That is separation of powers. Now, this is much the same as the argument that Trump's legal team made before federal district judge Aileen Cannon. Former President Trump's defense team tried to persuade the judge overseeing the national security documents case to dismiss the indictment. This is how the media reported it, pushing a long-shot argument that special counsel Jack Smith was not properly appointed. It's not a long-shot argument. It's the only argument that is right. And so over red state, Strife writes, this is an ongoing campaign by Jack Smith and the media to gaslighting and thinking. The argument is specious, but these are the same people who told you Joe Biden's dementia and physical decrepitude were cheap fakes. Don't believe them. Smith's case is particularly weak because the Senate never confirmed him to any position inside the federal government. None. And even so, if the Justice Department's internal special counsel rule is legal, there's a huge question mark floating over Smith's ability to serve in that position. Thomas has to be aware of the blowback he's going to get over using his concurrence, but you know what? He's not getting blowback because nationally, I'm the only one talking about it. As I brought it up to you on Monday in his concurrence. But it should give some heart to Judge Cannon in Florida. It should give some impetus to her not only to hold a hearing, but to reach the right conclusion. And I will tell you this further. The fact that the court, the 6 members, did their immunity ruling, coming under this attack as a illustration to all constitutionalists who are on the bench, serious judges. Just do what's right. They can't touch you politically. Just do what's right. The country will benefit. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need. We swear, we move, we're flexible, we bob and weave, but there's always a core issue or theme, isn't there? Always. I talk to you all the time about power. The Democrats, the American Marxists, the Islamists are power hungry. I'm even developing my theories on this that I'll present to you at some point, so I have to be careful what I say since everything I say is taken down. So I'm going to hold back on some of it if you don't mind. But there will be an occasion to use it. There was a brilliant professor, University of Alabama, Forrest McDonald. And he wrote a great book called The Intellectual Origins of the Constitution. And since the Democrats now are the great constitutionalists, when they wanted to burn down the statues and Independence Hall and all the rest of it. And he pointed out the constitutional reallocation of power has created a new form of government, unprecedented under the sun in the United States, in America rather. Every previous national authority either had been centralized or else had been a confederation of sovereign constituent states. The new American system was neither one nor the other. Was a mixture of both, and that word mixture is a word that Aristotle would use, by the way. James Madison developed the variations on this theme in Federalist number 39. After first calling attention to the checks inherent in having officials in the several branches be elected for periods of differing lengths, he analyzed the Constitution in respect to, quote, the foundation on which it is to be established, to the sources from which its ordinary powers are to be drawn, to the operation of those powers, to the extent of them, and I'm quoting Madison, and to the authority by which future changes in the government are to be introduced. That's in Federalist 39. He concluded that the Constitution was federal in regard to the first and fourth of these criteria, mixed in regard to the second and fifth, and national only in regard to the third. In some, it was a partly national, partly federal, not the purely national form that Madison himself had championed during the convention. And it goes on. I have my own theory. I don't know if there's some ancient who came up with it or somebody 300 years ago, but on my own readings and study over all these decades, really half a century. I know I don't look it, I don't sound it, but nonetheless, half a century. Although I definitely feel it. Marx talked about the driving force among mankind is materialism, economics. Others who we admire so greatly have said the driving force among individuals and mankind is liberty. Others have come up with other thoughts and theories. Here's mine. That the driving force for mankind, and by the way, there are exceptions. When you say mankind, it's the general rule, is power. I'm not going to get into power in the sense of your family or your individual lifestyle or anything. I'm talking about as a society, as a culture, if you look around the world, if you look at history, ancient and more recent, the battles are over, the debates are over, power. We don't even talk about liberty in this country anymore, do we, Mr. Badu? But power is crucial. Separation of powers is what preserves your liberty. More when I return.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Okay, people are interested. I'm not going to go too far with this because I'm already playing around with it on my own. When it's fully developed, I'll provide it to you, may I say, chapter and verse. What is the debate? Mostly when we come to government, is about freedom and liberty. Well, maybe among us it is. But it's about power. Justice Scalia famously said, and I played this clip here, and I've played it on Fox, and I've played it on Blaze because he was so brilliant and articulate. He said, I asked people, what's the most important part of the Constitution? I'm paraphrasing, obviously, and he says, they usually say the First Amendment, freedom of speech, or due process rights, or probable cause, no general warrants, things of that. He said, that's crazy. The Bill of Rights was an afterthought. A little more complicated than that, but let's go with it. The Bill of Rights was an afterthought. Well, it was adopted after the Constitution. I will say this. Most of the ideas for the Bill of Rights came from the state conventions, many of which said they would not vote to ratify the Constitution unless it was later amended. And that was the bargain that was reached with several of the states. Anyway, that's not the point. He said, and I've written, that the Soviet Constitution, particularly when you look at the 1936 Soviet Constitution, which I cite in 2 of my 10 books, he says they have a better Bill of Rights than we do. And he's right. I mean, they even talk about the right to a vacation, the right to health spas. I mean, it really goes into great detail. It's fantastic. And yet, it's the most deadly genocidal state man has ever known. And yet that was Stalin's Constitution of 1936. What was the problem? And as Scalia pointed out, the framers would have called these parchment rights. In other words, rights on paper, but not actual rights that were enshrined, adhered to, nurtured. Separation of powers. What is the Constitution all about? All of it. Separation of powers. These men, in less than 5 months in Philadelphia, the delegates to the Constitution, they had to come up with a document that rejected the idea of centralism, like a monarchy, and yet rejected the idea of pure democracy or mobocracy. As I've told you before, they obviously fought a brutal revolution that they almost lost against the first form of tyranny, but the second form of tyranny was as great a threat, and this all playing out during the revolution in France, 10-year revolution, which was absolute terrorism. Because in France, the revolution was about abolishing the society. The American Revolution was never about abolishing the society. The American Revolution was about creating representative government. to protect the society. And this is why the modern day Marxists and the rest of them wish that it was more like the French Revolution, that everything was burned up and destroyed. But again, for another day. So the Constitution, they had to make decisions. And so the Constitution is a fairly complex document. That's why even Jefferson and others talked about on immigration back then, that you can't just have people coming into the country who don't know the language, who are not willing to be assimilated and show allegiance to the country, actually understanding what the country is. And unfortunately, most Americans, unlike you, don't understand what the Constitution says and have never even looked at it. I don't even mean read the whole thing. I mean looked at it. Or I've never listened to this program where we discuss it all the time. Whether it is the division of power, as Aristotle, as Kant, as Locke, and more specifically Montesquieu, who was embraced by the framers and others, talked about a mixed power. And so we have separation of powers, the three branches of government. And whether it was to specify what it was in detail, yet ambiguous enough for the document to be adhered to as a country changes and grows. That is, what are the defined powers of each one of these branches? Can you imagine doing this from scratch, Mr. Producer? And then there were other issues that you had to deal with in a society. What did you want to promote? They wanted to promote commerce. So we have a commerce clause. The states were fighting with each other, taxing each other to prevent one from doing business with another. So commerce was a big issue for the well-being of the nation. And so much more. They created the office of the presidency. Nothing like it before in humankind. Nothing. They not only created a legislature, they created a bicameral legislature. Why? Because they had small states with small populations, larger states with larger populations. So what are you going to do? They came up with a compromise. All right, so we'll have this House of Representatives where we have representatives from smaller political divisions within a state, and then the states will be represented in the Senate. And they'll both have different powers, but from time to time they have to come together in order to exercise them from different perspectives and with different authorities. Genius, absolute genius. So we have the House and the Senate. The Senate is called the upper chamber, not because it was to be more powerful, it wasn't. It's because when the first Congress met, it met on the second floor, the upper chamber, the Senate, and the lower chamber, the House, met on the first floor. It's the lower chamber and the upper chamber. That's the way the Independence Hall and the Pennsylvania legislature, that's the way their building was structured. Okay. Now, each branch gets its different kinds of power. As Montesquieu, not the only one, argued, power versus power, where they jealously protect their power, their legislative authority, their executive authority, their judicial authority. And let me stop at that point. Let's focus on that. But the problem is, if your party's of the mindset that it doesn't really care about separation of powers when it controls one or more of the branches, that it supports the consolidation of power under the party. That is, if a Democrat is president, the executive branch, if the Democrats control Congress or one branch of Congress, say the Senate, or let's say the House, they're not interested in competing powers. They're interested in centralizing power, centralizing authority while they control power, while they have these offices in order to advance their agenda. And when they're out of power, that's when they support the diffusion of power, the diversification of power. So when Trump is president, he's always a dictator, according to them. You understand? Or if they don't control the Supreme Court is a Politburo. So the Supreme Court needs to be attacked until it can be engineered or jiggered to accommodate the agenda of the Democrat Party and the American Marxists. The presidency must be re-engineered or rejiggered to accommodate their agenda. So they will support the separation of the branches when the opposition party is in charge. And of course, the opposition party, not perfectly, but tries to adhere to that. So they don't empower themselves as a party using the government, whereas the Democrat Party does the opposite. It consolidates power. So they want Joe Biden to issue executive orders like legislation, even though they control the Senate. They don't care. They're on the same page in terms of ideology, in terms of power. How many times have I told you, uniquely to anybody else, I think, that the Democrat Party is about the Democrat Party? It's like a communist party. The Communist Party is key. That's how you get party. Not the country, quote unquote, the party. The party has to instigate these things. The party has to control the instrumentalities of government, the instrumentalities of the culture. It's the party. It is the party through which they operate. That's what Marx told them, and that's what they do. You and me, the Republican Party, it's weak. You know, we've got this one fighting with that one. We don't view the world that way. We don't view power that way. We don't view government that way. We're constantly fighting for the Constitution, which not only is to limit their power, but limit our own power. And therein lies part of the problem, to which there is no simple answer. We embrace a philosophy, not an ideology, a philosophy of a more passive power. Is this making sense, Mr. Producer? Am I boring you? All right, no. I just want to make sure, because I want to make sure I'm not boring people. So, not perfectly, quite imperfectly, but we believe as much as possible in modern society, since so much of the institutional division of power has been destroyed by Theodore Roosevelt, by Woodrow Wilson, by Franklin Roosevelt, by, you can go on and on and on, Lyndon Johnson and even Republicans, Nixon and so on. Okay, fine. That we don't even talk about this anymore. I talk about it. Because this is what I do. When everybody's off doing stuff, this is what I do. When everybody's going to the Republican convention to be seen and touched and felt and have a donut, I don't do that. Here's the point. We, as constitutionalists, defend, to the extent we can, the Constitution, these barriers. We don't believe in an all-powerful this or that. We don't believe in an all-powerful anything. The Democrats seek to destroy the balance. They want a power center. The division of power is a bulwark against their ideology. Not philosophy, their ideology. This American Marxist centralized government, centralized economic decision-making, ubiquitous power. The Constitution is inimical to this, antithetical to this. So the Constitution's the problem. For them. So they attack the founders. They attack the men who met in Philadelphia and drafted the Constitution and approved it. They attack the men who, in the state conventions, ratified it. Brutalized them. Viciously attacked them. Even though these men, some of whom did own slaves, some of whom did not. Even though these men created the cultural environment where liberty could spread, where equality could spread, where changes could be made. Provides the freedom, the opportunity, the tools for people who want to sabotage the Constitution and the country to operate. It is, as I've told you before, a puzzle we've never been able to solve. That is, the use of the Constitution to destroy the Constitution, and more specifically, the use of liberty to destroy liberty. But power. Joe Biden issues executive orders. Joe Biden opens the border to change the entire nature of citizenship, demography of the country, empower the Democrat Party, he hopes, and destroy the Republican Party. Power. Every voting change that they want isn't about enfranchising people. It's about empowering the Democrat Party. Power. Centralized power within the Democrat Party. Democrat Party doesn't stand for capitalism. They don't believe in free markets. They don't believe in the market system. They're going to impose electric vehicles on you. They're going to impose a certain type of light bulb on you, a fan on you. Why? Centralized industrial policy. Power. Power. If you're an independent contractor, we have to destroy the whole idea of independent contractors. If you're right to work state, we have to destroy the whole idea of right to work state. Why? Power. Centralization of power. So in society, in the culture, in the governing process, the focus is all the same. This is why you have to change the language. This is why you need to force feed values and beliefs that may be reprehensible to the nuclear family, or reprehensible to tradition or faith or whatever it is. These things must be destroyed. The party is the power base. So while Marx says mankind is about materialism, men have to eat. Whereas so many of the geniuses have said mankind is about individual liberty, seeking it. And I think that's very, very important, that we preserve individual liberty. And for some people it is. But for those in governance, for those in politics, the issue is not liberty. The issue is authority. Power. Now we'll hear the backbenchers on TV and radio try to work with this. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
It's like oppressor and oppressed, you know? So there I am sitting at my desk, minding my own business for hour after hour, weekend after weekend, and writing American Marxism, the book before my last one. And I'm reading Marx, which is really a monotony. He's not the only one. I've read Rousseau and Hegel and so many of the rest of them. And oppressor versus oppressed. This is the central theme throughout what I'm reading. And then Marx and Engels did a lot of Marx's writing. They actually put it out there a few times. And so I make it a very important marquee point in American Marxism. And now you hear people refer to this. This is what we try and do. We try and get this into the bloodstream.
Mark Levin, the cure for the common liberal. Talk to Mark now at 877-381-3811.
A buddy of mine, we go way back, Bob Seelig in Florida. This guy is great. We both got elected to the local school board at the same time. He was an old man. He was 27. I think I was 19, 20. Just kidding. He became the president, and he was fantastic, good man. So he sends me an email. He says, I think it's a joke, but it's funny. Joe Biden has something in common with all the dictators in the Soviet Union, all the leaders there. You know what it was, Mr. Producer? They all were said to have had colds before they moved on. Oh, he has a cold. That's why you don't see him. Remember all that? Well, some of you are too young, but it used to be. Oh, he has a cold. That's why you don't see him. Oh, okay. And then they would pass along. I didn't say pass away, even though they did. I said pass along. So anyway, this issue about power. I don't want you to get me wrong. We crave liberty. By the way, some people don't. But many do. We crave liberty. Some people crave security over liberty. You know, you ever see people, you watch how they act, and you say, what's wrong with this guy? Why doesn't he get off his ass and do something? Instead, he's on welfare. He gets his... They're not seeking to fulfill themselves through liberty. Doesn't matter. Sustenance. It's all that matters, sustenance. So people come at things differently, but liberty is something that people, most people, want. In little ways and some in bigger ways. But in order to have liberty, however you define it, in order to have success, in order to be able to live a full life, you must control power in its different forms. You cannot. I don't care if you're an athlete. I don't care if you're a plumber or an electrician. I don't care if you're a lawyer or a surgeon. I don't care who you are. I mean, I care, but you get my point. It doesn't matter what role you have in life, what you are pursuing in your life. You don't have the ability to do that. You don't have the liberty to do that. You don't have the free will to do that. In many societies on the face of the earth. Because they don't have mixed power. They don't have it. And so liberty, in the fullest sense of the word, is not exercised by the individual or the society. You can yearn it all you want. That's what I'm trying to say. What's it have to do with anything? It has to do with everything. When you see AOC attacking the Supreme Court, when you see AOC jumping up and down like a Nimrod for the big, fat, bloated Marxist, Bowman, who's a Jew hater, hates America, and he's not alone. When you see Bernie Sanders going off like a half-witted homeless person on a soapbox in the middle of Hilly Square, screaming about health care for all and this for all and that for all. Well, that sounds great, doesn't it? Well, ask the doctors, ask the nurses, ask the janitors who work at the hospitals, ask the technicians, ask the administrators, ask the secretaries, ask all of them if they think they should be your servant and your slave because you believe health care for all and you shouldn't have to pay anything. But that's, again, another issue. Man, this is why I do this. I could talk about 1,000 of these things, but you got to stay focused. It's like writing a book or arguing a brief or whatever it is. When you look at what the left in this country is doing, the Marxists, the Democrat Party, the media, it's all about destroying their opponents. It's all about character assassinating or caricaturing their opponents. It's all about, conversely, promoting and creating false idols, promoting a Joe Biden, creating him as a false idol. Then the public is onto it. So rather than destroy the whole enterprise, that is, the whole ideological enterprise, they're trying to figure out whether to broom him out or not. Because in the end, they need to protect their enterprise, their ideology, their pursuit of power. And they can't let much get in the way. And so if they have to broom somebody out, they will, reluctantly. So that's what they're struggling over. How do we retain power, gain power? Is he the best horse to ride, yes or no? Not what's best for America. And they don't care about the individual. We talk about fentanyl. They don't care. Talk about sex slavery, child pornography on the border. They don't care. If they cared, they'd do something about it rather than do something that in essence nurtures it with the wrong policy. We talk about Israel and what's going on with Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the PLO. These poor people are just trying to survive. Do they care? No. Their Hitler Youth are in the streets supporting the other side. They're Marxists in Congress, they're Islamists in Congress, support the terrorists. They don't care about individual humanity. They talk about abortion and quote-unquote women's reproductive rights, which has nothing to do with reproductive right. But again, the point is, to them it's just an issue to run on. If they thought being pro-life would get them more votes from the same constituents, the same base, they'd be pro-life. They don't care. The party was for eugenics. Now they claim to be for minorities. Whatever it takes. The party that was for slavery now pretends the other party was for slavery. Whatever it takes. So now the Supreme Court, circling back to the first hour, the Supreme Court, which issues an opinion in immunity, they say is just given enormous power to the office of the presidency. When in fact it's done the opposite. It's preserved the status quo as best as it can, with one exception that doesn't really help the office of the presidency. As opposed to the president who's there attacking the court. Yet he's the most dictatorial president in terms of abusing his office, using executive orders, stealing the power of the purse from the House of Representatives, stealing the legislative power from Congress. In other words, separation of powers. He's a man who's done more damage to separation of powers than any president in modern history, or ever history period, other than maybe FDR. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Well, there's so much more I want to say about these things. But before the show is over, there's something I wanted to get to, and that's the BBC. And there's no easy way to sink this into the rest of the program. It stands out on its own as it must. Bob Hogue over at Red State. You ready for this one? We've seen some of the deranged reactions, he writes, from the left over the Supreme Court's ruling on Monday that a president enjoys immunity for official acts. AOC is threatening to impeach justices. CNN's Jake Tapper frets that the decision gives the commander-in-chief the authority to assassinate his rivals. How sick. How stupid. A worry parroted by MSNBC legal analysts, while unhinged commenters on social media advised the president to drone strike Trump. All in all, a very impressive showing of hysteria, insanity, by democracy-loving quote-unquote progressives. One British Broadcasting Corporation presenter, COVID, seriously, took it to a whole new level, though openly encouraging Biden, ready for this, to assassinate his rival for the president. I've got to tell you something. I've told you this maybe twice before over the course of the years. I truly do fear for Donald Trump's safety. I truly do. When you step back, put the politics aside, and think about what he's been called, the lies about his threats to humanity, his threats to democracy, the comparisons to Hitler. When you think about, they say he's going to kill people, lock people up. I really am worried. My wife and I talk about this a lot, about the safety of Donald Trump. From the Democrat Party and the media, starting at the top with Mr. Nowitz. Nowitz, is that an ethnic name, Mr. Producer? Mr. Nowitz? No, Mr. Nowitz. David Aaronovitch, if that is his name, who presents BBC Radio 4's Briefing Room program, had apparently clamored for the 45th president's killing online, quote, on the basis that he is a threat to America's security. See what I mean? Posting on social media, he said, If I was Biden, I would hurry up and have Trump murdered on the basis that he is a threat to America's security, sparking instant outrage online. In response, some claim the presenter's post had amounted to an open call for violence, with others suggesting people have had police visit for a lot less. That is sick. This guy must be the British version of Keith Olbermann, he writes. The former ESPN, yeah, we know who he is. After widespread outrage, Ernovich deleted the tweet 90 minutes after he posted it. After leftists are wont to do, he blamed the right wing for his violent words and ludicrously claimed his post was plainly a satire. Sure it was. Not only was he inciting violence, writes the writer, but he wasn't even man enough to stand by his words. It's plainly a satire. My ass, that's a fancy British word. There was absolutely no satire or humor to his tweet. And yet, putting this fool aside, when you have Rachel Maddow, when you have Jake Tapper, when you have every bobblehead on MSLSD and the Constipated News Network, every Marxist wannabe in the Democrat Party, every demented politician, starting with the top, Mr. Demento, Mr. Biden, saying the same thing, including a Supreme Court justice in her disagreement with the rest of the court, they are laying a foundation for something I hope never occurs, which would be a horrendous event. I want to salute all you heroes out there. Thank you for being here. God bless each and every one of you. And I'll see you right here tomorrow. Take care.